Being labeled as a 5-star recruit is a rare achievement. It is extremely difficult to get to that status alone. But the guy we're going to talk about in this video wasn't only a 5-star recruit, he was the #1 overall player in the country. I want you to really think about that for just a second. He was the best of the best. There literally wasn't a single player better than him. It's not even a biased opinion, it's cold hard facts. When you're labeled as the #1 player, technically that means there's not a single person anywhere better than you. If being the #1 overall player wasn't rare and special enough, he was a running back. It's not every day you see that. In most occasions, the top player is normally either a quarterback or a defensive player, like a defensive end. Listen to this. Tyrann Mathieu tweeted out, "Everybody in the world wanted to be like Reggie Bush. Us in New Orleans, we wanted to run the ball like Joe McKnight." I would say that is some pretty high praise. With all that being said, I know what you're probably sitting there thinking. Man, he had to be a monstrous running back. Not necessarily. He was only roughly 5'11", 200 pounds. Don't get me wrong, I'm not calling him small. At the same time, he wasn't like this big, dominating force at the high school level that was running over everybody. Let me give you a better example to put it in a better perspective. He wasn't like a Derrick Henry. When Derrick Henry was in high school, he was rushing for nearly 400 yards a game and nobody could tackle him. What made Joe McKnight so attractive to all these scouts, college teams, and even some NFL teams is he was insanely versatile. Me talking about it doesn't give it any justice. It was borderline unbelievable. Coming out of high school, yes, his main position was running back, but early on in his career, he was playing defensive back. To go along with that, check this out. In one season of high school football, he had 9 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns, 4 punt return touchdowns, and 3 interception touchdowns, and hold on, 1 kickoff return touchdown. Man, oh man, that stat line right there should tell you everything you need to know about him. You hear the phrase and quote from time to time, "Oh, this player, he can do it all." No, you don't understand. Joe McKnight could literally do it all. Overall, as a running back, what excelled him and took him to another level was his ability to catch the ball and run the ball. So that's why, at least in my humble opinion, I think he was regarded as the #1 player, and that's why he was rated so high. When everybody saw him play, they were all saying the same thing. He has an NFL play style at the high school level. Actually, now that I think about it, he had the modern play style of 2022 that you see now, but he was doing it back in 2004 and 5. You hate to label a guy as a can't miss, but he was about as close to a for sure thing as you'll ever see. Main reason, once again, it all goes back to him being more than just a running back. He could do a little bit of everything. But however, as great as things were going for this man, and they couldn't have got any better, his football career and life had one of the most brutal endings you'll ever see or hear about. His football career and life was cut short due to him getting murdered. Yes, that's right, you heard me correctly. The former #1 player in the country, the former 5-star recruit, Joe McKnight, was tragically murdered. Whoa, hold on. You know it's not quite as simple as that. Not only is there questions about it still lingering till this day, the ongoing case is going on still. There's many questions that people have, but it all leads us back to the main one we're going to try to figure out in this video. What really happened to Joe McKnight? Real quick, before we get into this video, we're on the road to 200K subscribers. If you want to help our channel out, and I truly mean this, I really appreciate when we gain new subscribers. And like I just said, it really helps on the channel. Consider hitting that subscribe button if you enjoy. If not, that's cool too. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get into it. First things first, before we even get into it and say anything, I want to say RIP to Joe McKnight, and my condolences go out to him and his entire family. To get into his story, we gotta throw it all the way back to his high school days. During his high school days, he wound up attending John Curtis Christian High School, which is located in River Ridge, Louisiana. Like we stated earlier in this video, he didn't start out as a running back, he started out playing defensive back. Unfortunately, around his junior year of high school, that's when him and his family was affected by Hurricane Katrina. I'm not a hurricane expert, but I do believe Katrina is arguably one of the most famous and one of the most damaging hurricanes of all time. I was young when it happened. I don't remember all the details, but I do remember it affected a ton of people. For Joe McKnight and his family, that was the case, and they had to move to Shreveport, Louisiana. This is where he enrolled into a new Christian academy, but he only played 2 games there. To make a really long story short, they moved back to their old high school, and he was back like nothing happened. When he moved back, that was around 2005, and his season was shortened due to the hurricane. Despite him having a short season, he still scored 22 touchdowns. It is key to note he was playing defensive back still, but he was also playing wide receiver and running back. back. In that 2005 season, he had 9 rushing TDs, 5 receiving, 4 punt return TDs, 3 interception run back TDs, and a kickoff return touchdown. That right there is crazy, absurd, impressive, whatever word you want to use. The best stat line out of all those is when he was playing running back, he was averaging a whopping 18 yards a carry. Let me repeat that. 18 yards a carry. Do I even have to go on and say anything about that stat line? It's something out of this world. It's ridiculous. I simply can't get over the fact that somebody in high school averaged 18 yards a carry. I could talk about that stat line for days. I think you get the point. It's really good. Moving on, though, heading into his senior year of football, he got even better. Giving you a little timetable update, his senior year took place in 2006. I guess you could say he had a down year running the ball. He only averaged 16 yards a carry. To even think about and consider averaging 16 yards a carry is a down year from your previous year, it's absurd. On the ground, he had 14 touchdowns. He was also playing wide receiver a lot and had 735 yards as a receiver and 13 touchdowns. I understand I've said it a lot in this video, but I want to emphasize it so you can understand he was the definition of versatile. That's why all these scouts in colleges were falling in love with him. They were like, man, we can use this guy anywhere on the field and he's going to help our team. He was a plug and play guy. Put him on the football field and he's going to be good. The best way to describe him, and I've used this reference before, but he's a guy if you're playing football in your backyard, you want to pick number 1. He's going to lock you up on defense, he's going to run you over, he's going to play wide receiver, do everything. When it was all said and done for his notorious high school football career, he was the number 1 player in his state, number 1 running back, and the number 1 player overall. Of course, he was a 5-star recruit. He had a grade of 9997 on 24/7 Sports. His college recruiting process was somewhat controversial. He narrowed his options down to LSU and USC, and many people thought he'd stay home and go to LSU, but he didn't. He went to USC and it shocked everyone. People from Louisiana were so pissed off that he left their beloved home state and went to LSU that his local high school band, Curtis High School, when they were playing in the Mardi Gras, people were booing them. If you don't know what Mardi Gras is, it's a big sort of festival that happens in the South, or at least in Louisiana. Coincidentally enough, after he made his commitment, his high school band, they were playing in it, and people were booing him just because he didn't go to the college they wanted him to. And I don't understand booing the band. They have nothing to do with his decision. I don't know, the only way I can justify it is people are like, hey, if we're not going to see him at Mardi Gras, we got to boo somebody that's associated with him. I guess that was the reasoning behind that. I don't know. But when he committed and signed with USC, he was the highest rated football player to ever sign with them. He was listed and ranked higher than Reggie Bush. So you could say, and it's not even an outlandish statement, that he had a lot of heavy expectations put on him. Speaking of Reggie Bush, that leads us into our next point perfectly. After Joe McKnight signed with USC on National Signing Day, he told reporters that former USC running back Reggie Bush was talking to him before he committed. Doesn't seem like a big deal, and I'm with you on that boat, but after doing some research, according to the NCAA, here's what they said. Quote unquote, the NCAA states that alumni cannot speak to players and attempt to persuade them to join their former school. So right there already, you can tell before he even stepped foot and played a single down of football at USC, there was controversies. That one wasn't too big of a deal, at least compared to some things that would happen later down the road. Later on, after he said he spoke to Reggie Bush, his high school coach came out and said, oh, he was lying about that and he misspoke during an interview. Reggie Bush and Pete Carroll also claimed and denied all the allegations that Reggie Bush talked to him when he was on a visit. Here's the thing, did Reggie Bush talk to Joe McKnight? I mean, yeah, more than likely, but I'm also looking at it like this. It's not too big of a deal. Even if it did happen, it's not like there was an investigation going on where Reggie Bush gave him $100,000. We're talking about a man simply just having a conversation. You also got to understand and remind yourself this isn't a 4-star recruit or 3-star or even a 5-star. It's the number 1 player in the country. So anytime they can throw dirt on his name and try to ruin his career, that's what the media is going to do. After some months passed, that would die down and there was no more controversies and he could strictly focus on the game. In 2007, as a true freshman playing for USC, one of the best teams in the country at the time, he had 94 rushing attempts for 540 yards. That's 5.7 yards a carry. He also pitched in with 23 receptions for 203 yards. I would say, considering all the hype around him and expectations, he had a good year. Not a bad year, not an average year, not a great year, a good year. I want y'all to look at it the same way I'm having to try to look at it the way people were back then. You gotta understand, we're not talking about a 4 or 3-star. This was the #1 player in the country, and I have to emphasize that. The expectations are different. Maybe if he was a 4-star having 500 yards in his first year, oh yeah, that'd have been great. But with him being regarded so high, not so much. Heading into 2008, this is when everybody was sitting there going, all right, man, you had 1 full year under your belt. It's time for you to go off and prove you're really that guy. Once again, similar to his freshman year, it was good, just not quite great like we were kind of hoping to see. He had 89 carries for 659 yards. That's insane. He was averaging over 7 yards a carry. Through the air, it was similar to the prior year. He had 21 catches for nearly 200 yards. I think we're all in the same boat. Those are good numbers, just not quite great. He's played 2 years of D1 football and he's yet to have a season with over 1,000 scrimmage yards. I don't want to say he was disappointing, but he kind of was, and I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. To put it in a better perspective, this is exactly how it was. Heading into the college football season, whatever team you go for, have you ever seen everybody predicting your team to go 11-1, 12-0, and have a awesome year? And in the season, you don't have a bad year, but you go 9-3 and 8-4. You're somewhat disappointed. You're not really sitting there going, man, we suck, we had a terrible year, but you got your hopes let down because you were expecting to go 11-1 or 12-0 like all these ESPN commentators were saying. You got let down, and it wasn't because your team was bad, it's because your expectations were a little too high. That's the best way to describe it with Joe McKnight at USC. He wasn't playing bad, he was playing good, just not as good as we thought he would. Let's keep it real though and look at the facts. Maybe some of that's due to the coaching. The dude was averaging over 6 yards a carry in his first 2 years of college football. He wasn't getting the ball enough, on the ground or through the air. In his first 2 years, he didn't have a season with over 100 rush attempts. I believe a lot of his failure to live up to the hype, it falls on the coaching staff too, not really him. The biggest what if and the biggest thing I think he regrets is not going to LSU. You better believe if he would have chose to go to LSU, they would have fed that man the rock. I don't want to get into that conversation because number one, it didn't happen, and number two, it's just a different conversation for a different day. We can play the what if game all along, but the bottom line is he chose to go to USC. After his sophomore season wrapped up, heading into 2009, this was supposed to be the make or break season. This was supposed to be the season where he establishes himself and he's known not just locally, but across the world that he's a top running back. In that season, finally, they chose to feed him the ball, and it was what they should have been doing all along. He had 164 rush attempts for 1,014 yards, which comes to an average of 6.2 a carry. He had 8 touchdowns on the ground. Through the air, he had 22 catches for 146 yards. However, the talk around USC wasn't involving his play on the field, it was involving some other stuff going on. That other stuff going on that I'm referring to is that Joe McKnight was spotted driving a brand new 2006 Land Rover on campus. If you don't know what a Land Rover is, approximately most of their cars are valued at $100,000. If you don't know what a Land Rover is, they make the Range Rover, which is a car that goes up to what, like $250,000. Land Rover is an expensive car company, so that's all you need to know. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem wasn't that he was driving a brand new Land Rover. The problem is that it was registered to Scott Schneider. If that doesn't scream out a red flag, I don't know what does. If a college football player, especially back then, is driving a car registered to some random dude that goes by the name of Scott Schneider, yeah, it's gonna cause some chaos. Weirdly enough, they started doing some investigating, and Schneider, who was 47 years old, had a background that includes marketing, and he owned a company website that was under the name forjoemcknight.com. A little fishy and a little weird. Not just a little, a lot of weird if you gotta ask me. Why does some guy that is associated with USC own a website that's labeled forjoemcknight.com? I don't know. Or my bad, I said he's associated with USC. It was actually said that he doesn't have any ties with them. Some of you may be wondering how he got caught, and it's obvious. He was driving it around campus and everybody's like, yo, how did he get that car? I did some digging, and according to the DMV official records, it said that Scott Schneider paid approximately $27,000 for that Land Rover and registered it himself. All of this was going on around 2009, so $27,000 back then is what, roughly maybe $60,000? I think that's fair to say. $27,000 for a car till this date is a lot, so even if that happened now, yeah, it's gonna raise some flags. One key piece of information to note, and I was like, okay, this is why it was big and people are talking about it is because USC asked all of their athletes back then to let them know whenever they get a new vehicle so they can register it under their name. So for example, if Joe McKnight, his family bought him the Land Rover and he goes to USC and registers it, not a big deal. But in this case, he was driving a nice and brand new car, and USC, when they looked at the records, they didn't see it registered under his name. But check this out. What makes it even all more strange, if it wasn't strange enough, is that Joe McKnight claimed he had no idea who Scott Schneider was. Quote unquote, here's what McKnight said in an interview. I play football and I have a child. I'm not the type to get into everybody's business. I worry about my own. He also added this. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just being a football player and a father to my child. I won't break any rules because I know if I do, I can't get on the football field. I'm trying to keep my life secure and stay on the football field. It was just a messy situation, and that's all you need to know. It was also rumored that his girlfriend, she worked for some guy and he let her borrow the car from time to time. Come on now, we all know there was definitely some illegal activity going on. You don't gotta be a rocket scientist to figure out the guy that bought the car and lended it to Joe McKnight, he probably does this for a couple other USC athletes, at least at the time. They was trying to keep it low key and under the table, and it didn't work. Joe McKnight was even caught lying about it multiple times. There was one time he stated it was his girlfriend's car, but he was driving it all the time by himself. You would think some serious allegations would come out of it. Nothing really did. The only thing that happened is he was suspended for their bowl game that year. Shortly after all that went on January 8th in 2010, he declared for the NFL draft. With him being not too impressive throughout his college career, he fell all the way down to the 4th round and was selected 112th overall by the New York Jets. He definitely struggled in the NFL, and he can only blame himself. He wasn't working out and taking care of his body, and he even stated he wasn't in proper condition to even play. You can get away with not working hard if you're talented at the high school level and maybe even college. The NFL though is a completely different ball game, and if you're not working out and staying on top of your game, you're going to get exposed. We saw what happened with Eddie Lacy, and if you don't, you can go look it up. He didn't stay in shape and he got cut. Due to him not working out and being in the shape he should, he fumbled 3 times in the preseason. I could beat around the bush and give you a million different excuses. His NFL career, it just didn't work out. He played 3 years for the Jets all the way up into 2012 and never had a season with over 200 rushing yards. He got released before the 2013 season and didn't even play throughout that year, but he did sign back with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2014. Sadly, and you hate to see this for anybody if you're an athlete, he only played in 2 games before suffering a torn Achilles, and it ended his season. You hate to see that, especially in that year, because right before he got hurt, he had 2 receiving touchdowns. He didn't give up that easy. He rehabbed and he came back to football in 2016. Not to the NFL though, he joined the Canadian Football League. When he joined the Canadian League, this was in 2016 and he was playing for the Rough Riders. He was impressive to say the least. In his first start, he had 17 carries for 150 yards. He only played in 3 games in 2016 and totaled up 38 rush attempts for 228 yards. Not too bad. Things were looking decent for him. He was at least getting paid to do what he loves, and he was under contract with them up until 2017. So maybe if he did really good for them in the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, he could have found his way back into the NFL. You also got to take into account the reason he got released by the Chiefs was because he had a torn Achilles. Right before he tore it, he had 2 receiving touchdowns, so it's not like he was a bench player. He was producing. Not a lot, but somewhat. You get the point. It's not like he was a 5th or 6th round running back on the roster. Our story takes a drastic, and I mean a drastic turn. In December 2016, this is when Joe McKnight was murdered. You want to know the worst part about all of this? Right before he got killed, he was expected to be signed by the Minnesota Vikings. That's how good he was doing in the Canadian Football League. I know. You're sitting there saying, yo Matt, what happened? Hurry up and get to the point. Well, it wasn't no special day. It was a random day, and Joe McKnight and some random guy he didn't know, they were driving recklessly on the highway. According to the sources, McKnight was the one weaving in and out of traffic, and he was driving really fast, and we see this all the time. It happens. I'm sure most of you drive, and you've seen this from time to time. You got that one guy who thinks he's in the Fast and Furious. Anyways, that's what Joe was doing, and he cut somebody off, and I guess they was having a bad day, so that person he cut off, he followed him. The next thing you know, Joe McKnight notices some guys riding his bumper, and eventually they come up to the same red light. According to the sources, when they get to that red light, Joe McKnight gets out of his car and goes up to the other guy's car. The guy he was beefing with or in the road rage incident with goes by the name of Ronald Gasser. And when McKnight walked up to Ronald Gasser's car, Gasser shot him. You know how this goes, and I'm not gonna get into all this court stuff that's still going on, but Gasser in his defense, they're saying, oh, well, Joe McKnight, he lunged at him and he was appearing like a threat. I'm not going to get into that. It's a he said, she said. For example, the defense for the guy that shot him said, what do you think he was gonna do when he went up to his window? Invite him to have tea? Ladies and gentlemen, check this out though. Somebody was there stated that Gasser, the person who shot him, said, quote unquote, I told you not to F with me. It was also proved and stated that Joe McKnight didn't lunge at him, so he got caught lying. And this is how you know the guy who shot him, he knew what he did was wrong. After he shot him, he didn't try to leave, he just sat there at the scene. It's almost like he gave up. He was like, man, I messed up, I'm going to jail. Here's one report that came out and I find rather fascinating. This isn't about race. Not a single witness to this day said there was one racial slur uttered during the course of these events. Unfortunately, a life was lost. But you want to know something, folks? 2 people engaged in bad behavior that day. Why? I don't know. I want to make this very, and I mean very clear, I'm not condoning anybody's behavior and what happened. Ronald Gasser was convicted of manslaughter and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Here is my final take on the situation, and I'm also curious, let me know your thoughts down below. The person who shot Joe McKnight, he is in the full out wrong, and yes, he should have went to jail. No questions asked. You're not getting out of that in my opinion. That's what I believe, and I don't care if Joe McKnight was cussing at you through your window or even lunged at you. If he didn't bring up a gun and it was said that didn't happen, it doesn't give you the right to shoot a man. However, with that being said, I also believe Joe McKnight shouldn't have done what he did. For those of you that drive, you know that road rage is a serious thing. I can also almost assure you that a good majority, maybe 5% of you watching, have had road rage at least one point in time. Come on now, don't lie. It maybe wasn't this bad, but you could relate to it somewhat. If you do get or have road rage currently, I think you're a psychopath and you need some help. Me personally, I don't have road rage. You know why? Because I'm not a lunatic. If you have road rage, you need to get checked out or you need to quit driving. The biggest and main reason I don't have road rage is because 1, I am a calm person, but number 2, because of crap like this. If this doesn't send you a warning or at least puts in perspective at just how crazy some people are, I don't know what will. Joe McKnight shouldn't have got out of his car. He put himself in a bad situation. I'm not saying he should have got shot. What I'm saying is, when you put yourself in bad situations, sometimes bad things can happen. For example, to put it in a better perspective so some of you can understand, if you go into a low income or poverty neighborhood and you're wearing flashy chains and you got on Gucci and Louis Vuitton, the chances of you getting robbed are far more likely than if you were wearing that stuff if you were in a high income neighborhood. Applying that situation to this current one, walking up to cars when people do have road rage, it's not the smartest idea. I hope somebody out there watching this can just take notes. Please do not get out of your car when there are crazy people out there. You can feel how you want about it. I believe Joe McKnight is the full-out victim in this situation, and it's been proven. Once again, should he have walked up to the car? No. But should he have got shot? Heck no. There's people out there, and it's unreal to think about. If they're having a bad day, they're going to take it out on others. I don't know what was going on with this other guy, but he definitely did something that he probably regrets. I truly hate it for Joe McKnight and his family the most, considering the fact he was about to get another shot and opportunity with the Minnesota Vikings, and it all got crushed and thrown away because some random guy did something stupid. I did some digging and research, and it was also stated, as far as from what I could tell, that Joe McKnight, he was never involved in trouble off the field. That's why it sucks. Yeah, maybe the beginning of his NFL career and maybe even his college career, it wasn't all too hot, but he never gave up and he kept working. He could legitimately be in the NFL till this day if that guy didn't shoot him. It's messed up, man. I don't care if he came up to your car. Whose first instinct as a human being if someone comes up to your car is to shoot him? Definitely not me. Let me know your thoughts down below. Once again, RIP to Joe McKnight. My condolences go out to his family. You can drop a RIP in the comment section to show your respects. Let me know your thoughts down below. But with all that being said, it's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let's be great. I'm out. Peace.